morning, everyone. So we just heard from Amitabh Kansar, and I think the work he's done over his career is remarkable in terms of building innovation, showing aspiration and commitment to public service. And his leadership at G20 was a momentous moment in India's history. Now, if I'll break my talk into three parts. One, we'll look at, the histories of nations are defined in hundreds of years, not in what happens over a year or two. Second, we'll look at what MITY and the other government initiatives are to build the ecosystem. And third, where the gap is and where we can look to collaborate. So in a larger framework, when we think about it, the history of the earth and the civilization is billions of years old. So the first revolution that came was the cognitive revolution, where we made sense of community, the cognition, existence, and how to be humans. Then came the agricultural revolution, which took us from nomad to an agrarian economy and created a sense of community and creation in localized ecosystem. Fast forward to the modern history, we talk about the scientific revolution, be it the Einstein's contribution or Newton's, or let's talk about Thomas Edison with the electricity, the gravity, and the law of nature. Then came the industrial revolution in late 1800s, 1900s, when we talk about harnessing the power of steam to power the locomotives, talking about Henry Ford's steam model for assembly line functioning and unit economics. Fast forward, we come into what we call the computer or the technology revolution in the 70s and 80s, where the invent of computer changed a lot of things. Then came the internet revolution with Google, Meta, Microsoft, and all these companies that came in the early 2000s and really changed the way we operate. Now, if you look at it, what was the role that India played in all these revolutions? Maybe bits and pieces here and there, but we can't really lay claim to being the champions or the leaders. But today, we are going through what is a digital revolution. No other country can lay claim to the stakes that India can in terms of the digital ecosystem that we have created. Be it from your Aadhaar, a single identity for 1 billion people, to your UPI fastest, largest transactions, to COVID app, which did double dosage vaccine for more than 1 billion people, so 2 billion vaccinations on a platform in a country that's not fully connected. Talk about ONDC, democratizing the e-commerce business and making commerce accessible, available to every vendor and the consumer. National Digital Health Mission, making healthcare accessible and available to the elderly, to the most needy, and the underprivileged across the length and breadth of the country. Gati Shakti, for an integrated development across waterways, highways, roadways, airways. I can go on naming it. DG Locker, for storing your records and completely taking everything out of your hand, right? So India has created that digital stack that no other country can lay claim to because of the scale and the complexity of our country and the technology that has underpinned it. And this has not been something that government did on its own. Government laid the framework and the policies, and it was the entrepreneurs and the experts and the enablers who played a pivotal role. And of course, Sandeep Bikhchandani sir is here. So he knows that he's been an instrument part of creating that digital revolution in India with his company as well, Naukri.com, back in the day. But why and how did this digital revolution happen? Revolutions are not created by communities. It's created by individual. There's always a person behind a revolution. And it was our Honorable Prime Minister who had the vision back in 2015 when he said, let's create Digital India. Because digital is the future. In a resource-constrained environment that India operates in, how can we compete globally? We have to find our own path for the future prosperity. What is our competitive advantage as a nation? It's our demographic. So he created Startup India. He said the youth of this country cannot be absorbed in the corporate sector. We have to enable them to create their own opportunities. We cannot assume that they are not capable of creating their own employment and wealth. So let's give it a chance. And so Startup India was created. From few hundred startups to now more than 130 registered DPIIT recognized startups. And the number is going up. um, has changed a lot. Now, what are the foundational building blocks of this revolution, if you look at the larger scheme? One is, I'll go A through E. A is accessibility, affordability, and availability of these resources and services to all the citizens of India. That was the guiding principles of Digital India. Then came B, which is the banking. India today is a leader both in physical and the online banking, with the fintech sector leading the way, and where we are in the banking today. C for connectivity and cloud. Both physical connectivity across India as well as the cloud connectivity has really gone up, which is allowing people to collaborate. D for data and demography. Data is the cheapest, and demography, as we heard, 70% of the population is below the age of 35, so they are in the prime of their economic contribution to the country. Now, E is for entrepreneurship. What used to be a risk-averse country back in the day is become a risk-taking country. Today we talk about, let's create a startup. People are not worried if they don't get called for a campus placement. They're saying, okay, you know what? I have a better thing. I don't want to be a sales executive somewhere. I can create my own. Right. And the enabling environment that the government is providing these entrepreneurs, because, so this is the narrative that the nation as a whole is creating. But in terms of the actual resources being provided, so Amitabh Kant sir mentioned about Atal Innovation Mission and a couple of other initiatives, but the mandate from our Prime Minister has been that every ministry has to focus on developing ecosystem for startups. So Niti Aayog did Atal Innovation Mission, Startup India Mission has its own funding scheme, ease of doing business programs. DST has its own incubation centers and the technology innovation hubs, TIHs. IDEX does for defense. Agriculture does something. BIRAC does for biotech startups. MEITY, at Ministry of Electronics and IT, will talk about a few initiatives that are critical. So we have funding schemes all the way from idea level to fund of fund. So we give a little bit money to entrepreneurs to validate their idea. We give some money for prototype creation, and we give up to 40 lakh rupees for commercialization. It's all grant. Then we have an investment scheme where we do matching investment on the same terms as a lead investor in a round, up to 50 lakh rupees. That's more of an investment approach we are taking, and I'll delve into that a little bit more later. Third, we have a fund of fund scheme, where we are externally managed fund of fund, which invests in VC funds, which invest in electronic and hardware startups. So that's a whole ecosystem of funding. And as physical assets, we have more than 150 incubators, accelerators, and center of excellence across the country. And these COEs are emerging tech as well as deep tech. So from nanoelectronics, nanofiber, membrane, to AR, VR, gaming, animation, VFX, we have these center of excellence across India. We have 7 of them in the Northeast. Each of the Northeast state has one as well from IT, called Octane. So these are some of the initiative. But on a larger framework, we talk about it. We have what's called a DLI scheme, which is a design-linked incentive scheme under the India Semiconductor Mission, in which we give up to 15 CR to a startup that's building the semiconductor ecosystem or operating in that sector. We have a mission called Bhashni, which is a national language translation mission. And the idea is that India is such a heterogeneous country with so many languages and dialects. And the strange part is, if I go to South India, Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, Tamil, I cannot find an app to translate Hindi to that, or in Uriya, or in Rajasthani, or Punjabi. Though the population that speaks that language is much bigger than what you'll find in many European countries. But if I go to Europe, I can find the app to translate English to Finnish, or Swedish, or Danish, but I can't find one to translate into these languages in India. So we are losing our own heritage, we are losing our own language, we are subservient to our own mindset. So what our Honorable Prime Minister said, ki bhasha daan karo, donate language. So the more we speak, the more content we create around our languages online, we can create the language models. We can create solutions. So that's something that MITY is doing. Third, last week only it was approved by the cabinet, the India AI mission. Now within that India AI mission, it's more than 10,000 CR project, but the idea is to build up the AI ecosystem in India. Now, all the way from compute, because you need a lot of compute for the AI ecosystem, to partnerships. You need the partnerships with the right state actors, the ethics of it, then the data protection, data anonymization, data access and availability. Then the fourth vertical we have is on the governance side, and fifth is on the startup. So out of the 10,000 plus crore, 2,000 crores is allocated for startups. Now we are building out the detailing part of it, that how do we provide that funding to the startups that are working on the AI space. Because the AI is the next revolution, which is good or the bad, is here to stay and will have a lot of impact both on the economic growth as well as the job creation and destruction across the economies. So these are just some of the initiatives. Now, one thing I'll tell is I was speaking with some of the IS officers at Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy for Administration day before yesterday. I was there for training program for them. We have to move away from the welfare economics to development economics. Welfare policies are good for the general sustenance of the population, but the entrepreneurship policies are not welfare policies, they are development policies. So we have to ensure that how do we bring more private sector participation in terms of developing these policies and these incentives. Otherwise, government generally doesn't tend to look at the ROI in terms of the investment of scheme expenditure, but that orientation is changing. We are trying to figure out how do we engage private sector more, how do we look at ROI, how we do impact assessment, how do we benchmark ourselves against the best, because digital economy has to play a pivotal role if India is to reach that $5 trillion economy in the next few years. So in summation, I think India stands at the forefront in digital revolution. Our entrepreneurs are leading the way, and the opportunities abound, plentiful in India across all the sectors, all the geographies, because where there's inefficiency, there's an opportunity. And India has a long way to go to be a developed economy. And I think you all will play a pivotal role in it. And forums like this with the Economic Times and others organize, it enables government to connect more with the startup ecosystem, and hopefully we can all work together to create a brighter future. Thank you.